All right, go ahead, sir.
Back in the 1920s, the University of Iowa, there's professors that wanted to make a machine to determine what they call horsepower. So they made 10 of these machines. And we owned one of them, which was a 1935 Ford. And that's where we learned how these things ran. We actually stripped it down, tore the pump apart. We had no idea how these things ran like that. So then we realized back then in them days, they only had small horses. So they didn't need a bigger truck. But nowadays, like back then, if they had a pair of heavies weigh 3,800 or 4,000, that was big. Now heavyweights weigh over 5,000, 54, 5,600, so you need a bigger truck. So we realized then that we had to go to a bigger truck and a heavier truck. Now, the engine has nothing to do with this operation. The clutch is disengaged. With a PTO lever, I got to pull back and set, which runs the pump here in the back. We run it in reverse gear because you got to have the low gear in the reverse and like that. So what happens is the horses hook onto this, they pick up this weight, the truck's in gear, which holds the truck here. If you didn't have it in gear, the truck would just take off and roll without the weights coming. So the truck's in gear. As this picks up, the weight picks up, there's a valve right there. When the weights go up, it opens the valve, allows the oil to flow through. There's a PTO chain that runs on that there, goes down here to the drive shaft and the shaft that runs that. So when the weights come up, the valve opens up and the truck will roll.
That's pretty neat.
And then you just keep adding the weights here.
And that's going to add tension to restrict the opening of the valve.
Yep. As we add more weight on here, I close the valve down more so that less oil flow goes through the pump so that it holds the weight. A lot of this is called resistance to the ground. We put boards, as the weight gets heavier, we put boards under the front tires. That's so it makes the truck drag a little harder, so these weights will stay up. Otherwise, when they pick the weights up, the truck would just take off and the weights would drop. And that's called resistance, is what it's called. And you just keep adding weight, and we close the valve down. I add to the boards. I can go, like in heavies, I'll probably end up going to 2 boards as we get up to 44, 4,500.
Right.
And that's the name of the game.
Now, as far as your weight on there, it says 3,300 up top. Is that actually 3,300 pounds, or is that going to convert over?
It's half the weight, and it's right here. You read this.
Really?
I don't have my glasses on. Every one of these weights here, if you want to read it, determines, and this is all considered on rolling loads. This is all on like wagons on the weights. I don't know. It says it's like 3,000, 3,500, 4,000.
So it equals over here what it equals to.
It equals what it is to rolling loads and tonnage.
So this is just the equivalence of the dynamometer.
Yeah, that's what professors came up with when they were inventing this.
We'll send that to you when you have a copy.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
So, but that's pretty basically it. We've reconstructed, I don't know how many of these now.
Now, it looks like a pretty simple design. I mean, in the grand scheme of things. Okay, it looks simple in theory.
These sprockets on these chains and stuff,
right?
They're a certain size. One tooth difference on how fast this pump will run, and the sprocket down there size makes this whole thing run different.
Right.
One little hole here, inch difference on this, makes this whole, every load change run different.
So it is very specific.
It is. And then you got to learn your ground, because if you get on sticky ground, when your loads get heavy with that board, that truck on the board, it'll make it drag harder, pull more resistance. So then you got to back off a hole here.
Right.
You know, open the valve a little more. And you can change this. I can put more weight of the truck by setting it on this end of the board, back up more, so more weight's on the board, or I can have it where I back up and it just barely sits on the board, just the tip of the board. So you got to know your ground,
Right.
you know, and then once you know your truck, it's supposed to be easy.
Well,
but when we tore it down and all that, man, I mean, we had no one help us on it, but it was very we spent days and hours trying to figure these things out. But once we learned it, then you want to stick to the same wheelbase. We like to stick to the diesel engine because it's heavier than gas. We have a certain rear end in the back, which is geared low because you only want that rear end to go so fast around.
Right.
And all that combined together makes it work.
That's so neat, though.
Yeah, like that. But it's what it is.
Well, hey.
Heavies will be getting on 44, 45, 46 at least. Maybe more. I've seen them get on 48, 49.
Gosh.
Just depending on the ground, how the horses feel.
Right.
46 is equal to 29.9 rolling tons.
Gosh.
29, almost 30 rolling ton load.
That's incredible.
All this is equivalent to rolling tonnage weight because it's on wheels, and that's what they had it on, is on wheels. That's that. But yeah, that's it.
Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time. This is a really neat machine.
Yeah, thank you.